Do you want a fresh 2025 NFL mock draft right after the Super Bowl ends? If you do, type me in the comments section of today's show. This video and that mock draft will be posted on both the NFL Draft by Chat Sports channel and the Chat Sports YouTube channel with most comments. Get it first. Spam me right, music. Now, the 2025 Senior Bowl has wrapped up, so we're breaking down winners and losers and spending a good amount of time on the quarterbacks as well. Always a fun video to do. Let's dive into it. Starting Positive Gray, AEL, the offensive lineman at North Dakota State. Little slow start to the game itself, but had a fantastic week of practice, can pretty much play all 5 spots along the offensive line. Whether he's a center or a guard, most likely. In the NFL, we shall see, but he played very well against better competition, was named Practice Player of the Week. I would argue that, and I think most people around the draft would the practices matter even more than the games. Themselves didn't get beat very much. In pass protection, a little bit of penalty problem, maybe work on there as well. But both Daniel Jeremiah and Dan Brugler giving him some round 1 buzz, which I find very intriguing. Stick with the green team, Mike Green. I didn't mean to make the green name, and green team pun. I apologize. The edge rusher from Marshall. You know, not all the guys played in the game itself. 'Cause not everyone needed to, Mike Green is going to be a top 20 pick in the NFL draft. I'm convinced of that dominant year for Marshall and can continue to showcase stuff during the Senior Bowl practices. You probably saw the Bowl Rush on Josh Conley, who actually overall had a pretty good week. But Mike Green just sent him into the next dimension. That is a very talented SP who has a chance to be the first player from the Senior Bowl drafted this year. Some other front 4 players I want to some love to Shemar, Stewart, Walter Nolen, Donovan, Ezeiruaku early in the week. Practices had pretty good performances. Stewart is a very freaky, gifted player. And then in the game itself, especially on the national team, side boy, things were impressive. Sai'vion Jones play for the American. That's the LSU pass rusher. He had 2 TFLs and a half sack. He got gray AEL several times early in that game on the national team side. 7 sacks by 5 players. David Walker had 1. Landon Jackson had 1, also kind of got a pressure that led to another one. Had a forced fumble on that sack as well, by the way. Oladejo had a UCLA, had 2 sacks. Junior Tuna had 2 sacks as well. Josh Joyner had a sack as well for Minnesota. We'll come back to the main reason why. There was one not very good performance that we'll get to along the offensive line. But yeah, I don't think L. Jackson had a great week of practice, but then he got going when it mattered the most, and that certainly should not be overlooked. Who do you think was the biggest Senior Bowl winner this year? Let me know in the comments section of today's show, the pin comment. The ad comes here on YouTube. Take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Let's talk more. Senior Bowl winners, Darius Alexander, the Toledo pass rusher, had himself a very strong showing as well. 8 TFLs and sacks past year. For Toledo, the Rocket, defensive lineman, seemingly shed some weight a little bit. Going into this, had a really nice TFL early in the game and was really strong without the big practice. Even Jim Nagy mentioned Gray, Darius, Alexander as the top 2 of the top players. This week, Nagy, by the way, is the director of the Super Bowl. I like fun stories, so I'm going to include Danny Shaw in this one. He got a call at midnight, the night before the final day of practices. He flew right down, basically, went from the plane to the practice field, and had a pretty good day. He's not going to be an early round pick or anything, but fun stories are part of this. So I wanted to give him some love. Tess Johnson, the Oregon wide receiver. I will rant a little bit on the releases from some of these receivers in terms of the routes and packages. Um, the Senior Bowl, the practice in particular, set up perfectly for somebody like T.Z. Johnson. He's not a very big player, but he's shifty, he's fast. They can't really jam you the same way. Maybe they can in the NFL at Senior Bowl practices. And he cooked now the TikTok releases that were far too common at this week's practices, whatever. But Tesda is like a kind of stretched out tank. Dell is maybe the best way to describe him. There had a good year for Oregon. Not as productive as he was back in 2023, but, had a downgrading quarterback. Frankly, cut down on some drop issues as well. Everyone will link him to Denver because he is Bond's adopted brother, all right? Other wide receiver winners, Jalen Royals, C to practice, J.N. Noel, the Iowa State receiver, and his teammate Jaden Higgins had 1/2 a catch, by the way, on we'll talk about the trick passes that